Hi, welcome again to our third day of the Dive Hard Adaptive Scuba Symposium. I'm Tina Marie Hernandez.
I'm Jim Elliott.
And we're really excited to have you here for night number 3. We're going to be focusing on recreational therapy and having some people who've been in the rec therapy business for a while and working with Dive Heart for a while speaking on the panel this evening. So we're really excited about that. We're going to play for you just a short video that'll introduce each of the panelists and our presenter, Rachel Wilson, which will follow immediately after this video.
Yeah. And by the way,
What?
I love that song.
Okay, we're back. So just for a second, though, we're going to be seeing a video by Rachel Wilson, who's our speaker tonight. And after that, we'll join you again for our panelist discussion. Hope you enjoy it.
Hi. So people often think of scuba diving as an extreme sport, and it can be intimidating to many. But when done safely and within diving limits, it's a serene experience. We leave the surface of the water and we enter a new world. For those of you who have been scuba diving before, I want you to think back to those first moments underwater. For me, this is the moment that I fell in love with scuba diving. In those first breaths, I felt free. I felt free to explore this new world around me, free from the stresses of the day, and free from this box and limitations I had put on myself. My name is Rachel Wilson, and today I will be speaking with you about therapeutic scuba diving through a recreational therapy lens. I first began scuba diving in 2015 at Indiana University. At the same time, I was pursuing my bachelor's degree in recreation therapy. And here were two of my greatest passions in front of me. And I wanted to pursue them full steam ahead and find a way to combine them. I worked my way up through the PADI certification to become a scuba diving instructor, while I continued to learn more about utilizing recreation and leisure as a modality to bring about therapeutic change for individuals with disabilities. I became a visiting lecturer at IU. I received my master's degree in recreation therapy, and I passed my exam to become a certified therapeutic recreation specialist, also called a CTRS. Since 2017, I was able to pursue therapeutic scuba diving through the IU Adaptive Scuba Association. Our mission was to provide community engagement opportunities to individuals with physical and developmental disabilities, emphasizing the safe use of scuba and snorkel equipment, and to facilitate social interaction, physical activity, and improve self-confidence. Additionally, this provided a practical setting for IU undergraduate and graduate students to gain professional experience and serve as a platform for current and future research. Since 2017, the Center for Underwater Science and the Academic Diving program at IU partnered with Indiana University's Outdoor Center and Camp, Bradford Woods, during Riley Hospital Children's medical camps. Our instructors introduced basic scuba diving skills and engaged in underwater activities. And through these summer months, we were able to educate campers about scuba diving and empower campers to break down perceived limitations. Additionally, we have worked with Wishes for Our Heroes, Indiana, an organization that serves active military personnel. This organization recognized the toll that war had on these individuals and their families, and aimed to provide resources and help with some of these issues, such as possibly furnishing an apartment upon return home, or to participate and become involved with an activity such as scuba diving. So through these and other training opportunities, I was able to become a PADI adaptive technique specialty instructor and a dive heart instructor. As a CTRS, when evaluating emerging interventions in the field, we really need to have a complete understanding on the activity that we're implementing, the equipment used, safety considerations, evidence-based outcomes, and adaptive techniques we might utilize during the activity. So I want to go ahead and give a brief introduction to what scuba diving is as a recreational sport, to help those who are with us today as health practitioners who may not be familiar with what scuba diving entails. So at the basic level, what is scuba? Scuba stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. There are many varying scuba diving agencies across the world, and each will vary in their certification standards and progressive levels of development. However, they contain three very similar components: knowledge development, confined water sessions, and open water dives. So during the knowledge development section, students will work through course materials, and this portion focuses on scuba diving theory, scuba diving equipment, diving related injuries and dive safety, knowledge development, assignments, quizzes, and exams. Many of these agencies offer the option to allow divers to work through this knowledge independently through an e-learning online process or in a physical classroom with an instructor. During confined water sessions, divers work with an instructor in a pool-like setting. Here, divers learn to develop those scuba skills and increase their comfortability in the water, while also learning to respond to emergency situations. Student divers must demonstrate proficiency in these skills before moving on to open water dives. So through open water dives, divers demonstrate their scuba diving skills for an instructor in an open water environment through various open water dives. And if these skills are completed to those agency standards, then the diver receives their certification. These are just a few of the agencies that exist. NAUI, PADI, and SSI are just the basic, kind of provide a basic understanding and introduction certifications to scuba diving, while these last three, HSA, Dive Heart, and Disabled Divers International, focus solely on adaptive divers. They were founded for this purpose and work with those techniques and equipment to provide the best experience possible for their divers and increase independence in the water. So for those of you new to scuba diving, I want to introduce basic scuba diving equipment and some of the adaptations that have evolved through these innovative techniques. We utilize a mask to see underwater. Standard masks do come in different styles and shapes that might be able to accompany wide and narrow face shapes. Prescriptive lens masks are available through some companies who can take glasses prescriptions and actually make a customized lens for the mask. There is a full face mask option that encompasses the entire face. You can see it in this photo here. And this eliminates the need to bite down on a regulator and hold it in place in the mouth, which might be utilized in an individual who has less control of their mouth and the ability to do so. And these masks can be outfitted with a communication aspect to be able to actually speak to each other underwater. But these do require specialty training and certification to be able to use these safely underwater. We have different styles of fins to choose from. Some divers may choose the open heel fin, which is worn with a diving booty, or a full foot fins, which is slide on like a shoe. Some individuals may utilize prosthetic fins, which are made of materials of non-corrosive and well-draining materials. However, some individuals with limited lower extremity mobility may find that wearing fins underwater actually can make challenging conditions while swimming, especially in a high current situation, and may opt not to wear any at all. We may utilize Velcro straps or belts to secure floating limbs to ensure that the diver's feet aren't scraping along the bottom or, against coral, which could cause abrasions and injury to the diver. We always want to ensure that these are not too tight, they aren't pinching the diver and causing an injury as well. The buoyancy control or compensation device, a BCD, is worn like a vest on the diver. We have the ability to inflate and deflate these. For example, on the surface of the water, we may inflate these to promote stability and safety. It almost acts as a life jacket at the surface. BCDs do come in different sizes with multiple adjustable straps, such as a chest strap, shoulder straps, and waist straps for individual fit. When working with divers that might have limited mobility of their lower limbs or upper limbs, we may choose to use that jacket style, which inflates around the diver's entire body. The alternative is a back inflate style, but this has a tendency when inflated at the surface to push divers forward and face down in at the surface, which would cause additional risk. We have metal D-rings on our BCDs, which we could clip on weights to provide for stability and kind of fine tune that diver's position in the water that's going to be the most comfortable for them. The next piece of equipment we have is the regulator. This is connected to our air source to breathe underwater. We do have two for emergency buddy saving situations. And we might utilize a regulator necklace holder, which wraps around the regulator mouthpiece and is placed around the diver's neck. This allows the diver to easily recover the regulator if it is dropped from the mouth. This might be used with an individual who has limitations in their upper extremities and might provide easy recovery because it falls, it's right here and it's a little bit closer rather than floating away from the diver's body. Typically, these regulators are built into the right side of the diver, but there are configurations that we can make to some regulators if it would benefit the diver to have it on the left side instead. Wetsuits are utilized to keep divers warm in the water, and they come in varying thickness based on the diver's needs and the temperature of the water. Some companies have developed the ability to provide customization options and provide additional zippers or altered arm length or leg length or additional pockets. These additional zippers might be utilized by someone who has, sensitive skin and is prone to bruising or abrasions and pressure sores. For individuals with sensitive skin, we also want to provide a protective matting, which is essentially a yoga-like material that can be placed on the pool deck or the boat deck for them to use while they're putting on that wetsuit. Divers utilize weight to manage buoyancy. Weight placement can be used to balance the diver to get into a comfortable position underwater. And the great thing about these are they are highly varied. There's a lot of options, which is really customizable for the diver's needs underwater. So we might have, soft or hard weights. You might wear a harness. You might utilize the weight pockets built into that BCD or the trim pockets built in. We have clip-on weights, we have ankle weights, and weight belts as well. So the air that we breathe is kept in the cylinders that we wear on our backs. The standard size is an 80 cubic foot, which you can see here is a little bit taller than the 63 cubic foot tanks, which are a little shorter and lighter. So when we go to Bradford Woods, where we're working with smaller children, we might utilize these tanks so that they aren't too long for the individual and aren't too heavy for our diver. We have a couple of options to assist with moving through the water. Divers with limited or no mobility in their lower extremities may utilize webbed gloves for swimming and moving through the water. Additionally, we might use a underwater propulsion device or vehicle, which is essentially a motorized scooter. Every time someone participates in sport, there is a perceived degree of risk. As previously mentioned, a misconception about scuba diving is that it is a dangerous and extreme sport, but when done safely and within limits, it is fun and, as we'll discuss next, therapeutic. However, there are some considerations to take with divers and specific disabilities to ensure the safety of everyone involved. Each diver, no matter what agency you're going through, must complete a medical questionnaire. This is the most commonly used medical statement. It's a simple yes or no questionnaire listing various medical conditions. And if a diver has a yes on this medical, it is required that they receive a physician's signature to ensure that they are going to be safe during diving. Through agencies such as DiveHeart, some disability-specific considerations have been identified when working with or participating in scuba diving. One of the things that we need to keep an eye out for is thermoregulation. So we might utilize a cold spray bottle or dry and warm clothes on the boat to monitor this. And timing of when we put on our wetsuits and other equipment is going to be important as well. We don't want to cause overheating sitting on that hot boat riding out to our dive site. And it's just important that we don't cause, any unnecessary overheating or chilling for the diver. We know that reduced circulation can slow the healing process. So we need to be conscious when we're assisting divers to put on their wetsuits and watch for limbs dragging when we are underwater in the pool or in the ocean or in a quarry. Due to loss of sensation, that diver might be unaware that their foot is dragging against sharp coral. We need to be aware of the individual's bowel programs and ensure that we're providing a level of privacy. If necessary, most restrooms on a dive boat are not accessible. Autonomic dysreflexia is a condition that the entire adaptive dive team needs to be aware of, be able to recognize symptoms, and render first aid if necessary. It could be a reflex to a bladder constriction, but could also come from thermal or physical discomfort. Within scuba diving, we think about, is a toe being bent back in that diving booty or something similar to that. Muscular dystrophy is a progressive disease, and therefore the diver needs to have, a diving specific medical assessment before participating in scuba diving and have regular medicals done. And someone with muscular dystrophy should not dive when experiencing a relapse. Individuals with multiple sclerosis should consider, their level of exhaustion. And as with muscular dystrophy, it is advised that they don't dive during a time of a relapse and should continue to get regular medical assessments before diving. Individuals with visual impairments require planning in terms of underwater communication. We establish these clear hand signals on the surface. And then underwater, we might communicate, we want to keep it consistent, and these are done through hand squeezes or different finger placement to communicate signals and read their pressure gauge for them, or to let them know how much air they have left in their tank, or if we're going to go up to the surface. So different agencies have standards when it comes to underwater communication. For individuals who are hard of hearing or deaf, we want to ensure established communication on the surface. I think here it would be really beneficial if the CTRS knew sign language and diving specific signs. For any cognitive disability, we want to ensure that the diver completely understands the skills that they are learning. And it's important to incorporate, different learning styles and to go at an appropriate speed for the diver. Finally, patience is key when we're working with individuals with traumatic brain injuries, and we need to avoid task loading. Some health conditions are contraindicated contraindicative to scuba diving. So asthma is one of these conditions. It would be dangerous for a diver to have an asthmatic attack at depth. But some asthmatic conditions, dust, pollen, or childhood asthma might be cleared by a physician. And they utilize something called a pulmonary function test or a spirometry test to measure these levels. And epilepsy is another condition that becomes dangerous at depth if a seizure were to occur. Our biggest concern is that the regulator would fall from the mouth and increase the risk of drowning. Some physicians might clear individuals with a history of epilepsy, and if there's still hesitation, we could utilize or consider using the full face mask, which eliminates the risk of dropping that regulator and having to, bite down on it. It's built into the mask. Okay. As recreational therapists, we not only need to have an understanding of the equipment, safety, and procedures involved, but we require evidence-based practice when considering a modality. Throughout a literature review I completed during my master's degree, I was able to find several articles supporting the psychosocial, emotional, and holistic benefits and physical benefits related to scuba diving. Some of the psychosocial benefits include improved quality of life, increased self-confidence and self-concept, community integration, and through participating in scuba diving, individuals are able to become more confident in their abilities, limitations fall away, and that self-concept grows and increases. Studies also found changes in mental diseases such as reduction of post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, depression, insomnia, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Physical benefits found, a reduction in muscle spasticity and increased sensation in motor control or motor function, in individuals with spinal cord injuries. So these benefits were not limited to individuals with disabilities alone. Some studies found holistic therapeutic benefits for individuals who participate in scuba diving across the board. These benefits include physical relaxation and weightlessness, deep trust through shared experience, emotional response and relaxation through observing marine life and physical contact with the water, and some key principles of the aquatic environment are conducive to rehabilitation. The aquatic environment offers a reduction in the risk of injury, immediate and delayed biological effects, and increased rehabilitation through immersion. We can look at aquatic therapy for examples of these properties in practice, as it is often utilized as a treatment for rehabilitation. For example, buoyancy can be used as a great therapeutic utility. A fractured pelvis may not be, stable enough to bear weight on the surface, but in water immersion, the gravitational forces offset and allow for gentle strength building. Entering aquatic depth can reduce those weight-bearing restrictions. Therefore, through the understanding of the basic physical properties of water and their biological effects, we can translate some of these benefits to scuba diving. As therapists, we rely on evidence-based studies to legitimize a therapeutic modality. However, we may also utilize interviews as a tool during the assessment and evaluation phase to measure changes in response. Some adaptive scuba diving agencies' websites do contain links to testimonials from divers who report participating in scuba diving activities improved overall quality of life, provided community for them, and an opportunity to break down limitations, and some describe physical improvements during and after participating in scuba diving. Moving forward, additional research should be conducted to further the evidence supporting the benefits of therapeutic scuba diving. Now that our health practitioners have an understanding of the basics of scuba diving equipment, safety considerations, and the evidence, we can move into actually implementing scuba diving as an emerging intervention in the field of recreation therapy. So CTRSs have an increased knowledge and expertise to the therapeutic process. As recreational therapists, we utilize recreation and leisure experiences to bring about therapeutic change in the functional health domains: emotional, physical, spiritual, social, and cognitive functioning. And we utilize the systematic process called the APIDE process, which allows for therapeutic intent to exist within the intervention. Recreational therapists utilize many different activities and adaptive sports that don't require additional training or specific training. However, scuba diving is absolutely an activity that requires training before implementing for safety purposes. So during the assessment phase, the CTRS meets with the participant and sets the foundation for the treatment that follows. The CTRS assesses the participant's overall health, their needs, strengths, preferences, and participation in society. When choosing an assessment tool, it is very important to keep in mind what the CTRS is hoping to measure throughout treatment. Throughout my research, I've yet to encounter an assessment that I feel really fits well with scuba diving. However, there are these adaptive agencies such as DiveHeart who have developed some tools. You know, DiveHeart has the needed scuba assistance assessment and their adaptive diver registry form. Additionally, one of the OT doctoral students from DiveHeart has already developed an assessment that might be utilized by health practitioners that is more scuba specific. Assessments can be used as a tool to measure change through the beginning, middle, and end of treatment. The CTRS would benefit by working with one of these adaptive diving specific agencies so that they could utilize these tools. And the scuba diver, or the scuba diving instructor might benefit from having a certified therapist conduct the assessment. However, I will point out that many of these instructors have a lot of experience with working with individuals with disabilities during scuba diving specifically, and can provide insight on how they might implement adaptive techniques and equipment for the individual based on their needs. Working together, they might find that additional buddies are needed for the diver to be successful in the water. And when diving with individuals with disabilities, we assemble a dive team based on the level of assistance needed by the diver. The CTRS should consider the medical considerations and disability specific considerations when planning the dive team. The next phase is planning, which is very extensive. The planning phase includes setting goals and objectives based on the diver's needs and strengths. Here, interventions are chosen and planned for. The intervention here we're discussing today is scuba diving, but we need to establish what the goal of the individual is. Is this individual working towards a scuba certification? Or could the CTRS utilize evidence-based activities adapted to the underwater environment to provide therapeutic outcomes? The diver decides, what they hope to gain from the experience, and we need to consider as well what's appropriate considering time, location, and resources. If the diver's goal is to gain a certification, planning would follow more closely with the scuba diving agency we're working with and their standards and performance requirements. Earlier this week, Rachel Crane mentioned the 20 skills that seem to be similar across the different agencies that provide divers with the tools that they need underwater to be safe and comfortable. This list just contains some of those. They might vary. These are not 20 skills, but these are the most basic skills. These skills could be utilized by the CTRS towards specific objectives and goals set forth in the planning phase. For example, water entry. The diver must remember all of the steps of water entry in terms of inflating their BCD and securing their straps, including the mask and the regulator, holding it in place before they enter the water. So this might increase cognitive function such as memory and recall. CTRSs can provide therapeutic intent by breaking these skills down and analyzing how they might promote progress towards a diver's specific goals. The scuba diving instructor can provide adaptive techniques as needed to complete the skills. And Dive Heart and similar organizations have developed safe adaptations and are willing to explore outside the box to create an experience that is going to be best for the diver and provides independence for the diver, increasing autonomy, self-concept, and confidence. So certification might not be the goal for the diver, but potential still exists to utilize evidence-based activities adapted to the underwater environment to foster therapeutic outcomes. As CTRSs, we utilize evidence-based activities published in peer-reviewed journals and books to implement with our participants. These activities are based in evidence and represent the most up-to-date research and interventions from experimental studies. These evidence-based activities or prescriptive activities address specific participant-based needs and are tended to foster feelings of accomplishment and enjoyment, intended to energize the participant through positive experiences. But still, we need to utilize those scuba diving skills at the basic level and can still bring about therapeutic change through those skills and the breakdown and analysis of the skills in a pool-like setting. To choose the best activity for the specific diver based on identified goals and objectives, CTRSs utilize the activity analysis as a guide, which was published by Porter in 2016. The task analysis lies within the activity analysis and is used to break down the activity into specific steps. As an example, completing puzzles as a land-based activity contributes to memory, attention to detail, and problem solving. There are companies who make underwater puzzles that we could incorporate into the underwater environment as part of the intervention in a pool-like setting. Again, these land-based activities are the possibilities are endless. We could adapt to the underwater environment. So we want to provide the highest level of independence as possible to our divers while ensuring safety. First and foremost, we have our dive team. In our dive team, we have our diver. This dive team will focus around the diver and their identified needs and strengths and goals. When participating in scuba diving as modality, a dive instructor with adaptive training would be needed to be present. The instructor leads the dive and ensures that we're following training standards and ensures safety for everyone on the team. An additional dive buddy may be present to assist the diver for, in scuba diving skills. So you can see here, I'm assisting with swimming by holding the tank and swimming the diver through the water column. And an additional buddy might need to be present as well to assist in emergency buddy saving skills. So this team might look different for each diver, just based on their needs and the assistance provided by the dive team. So here I have a video that we can watch. As you can see, our diver is communicating with her instructor in front. And we are also communicating. I'm communicating up front with this instructor. In a minute, you'll see me, I kind of say, hey, let's go this way, and lead the team, through the water. And we had another diver with us who was a safety diver as well. So this is a dive team of 4. As professionals, we often utilize various adaptive sports and treatment. However, scuba diving requires additional training and safety considerations. So as a CTRS, you might not want to become a scuba diving instructor, but you should still complete scuba diving training before implementing this activity. The CTRS might train to just become a certified diver, or you could take the next step and work with an agency such as DiveHeart to become an adaptive dive buddy, so you can be trained in specific adaptive equipment and techniques. Scuba diving injuries can occur easily without proper training, and some of those injuries can be lifelong. That's why it's so important that we do receive training before implementing. Together, recreational therapists and scuba diving instructors can work together to create a therapeutic experience. The CTRS utilizes the APIDE process and ensures the therapeutic value, while the scuba diving instructor can contribute to the safety and development of scuba diving skills. Recreational therapists should not attempt to implement scuba diving as a therapeutic activity without first receiving training themselves. I think this training needs to be done before the therapeutic session and independent of any of their participants involved. One of the DiveHeart OT doctoral students is in the process of developing a therapeutic practitioner specific course that will address the need and set forth standards within the agency. During the implementation phase, the CTRS executes the plan. Scuba diving certifying agencies do have tools in place to document specifics about the diver and their equipment needs. Adaptations may need to be made during the activity, right? So for example, the scuba diving instructor might need to adjust the diver's weight, placement, and ensure buoyancy and streamlining. And the CTRS might notice that a part of the prescriptive activity is too easy for the diver and needs to increase difficulty. These adaptations and changes to the plan should be documented by the CTRS for further sessions. During the evaluation phase of the APIDE process, the CTRS analyzes the effectiveness of the activity implemented and the therapeutic change noted. Measured outcomes provide insight to the successful nature of the intervention. Processing questions should be included at the end of each session, which can use to serve as a evaluation to measure the participant's perspective of the activity. And during this phase, the CTRS may conduct another assessment to note any changes throughout participation in the activity. Documentation remains an important aspect of the process as we compare the progress from beginning, middle, and end of treatment. Progress notes need to be written at the end of each session so we can describe the client's behaviors, status, and achievements through treatment. And this can act as a guide for the next session as well, allowing changes to be made to the plan as necessary. Okay, in conclusion, scuba diving can be used as a modality to bring about therapeutic outcomes. For individuals with disabilities, we want to ensure that we are utilizing evidence-based practice in our profession. And we can use these evidence-based studies or scuba diver testimonials that have participated in some level of scuba diving. We have this opportunity to bridge the gap between practitioners and adaptive scuba diving agencies to bring that systematic therapeutic process to the activity. These adaptive scuba diving agencies are pushing ahead. They're doing these, they're running sessions, they're taking divers out, they're doing an amazing job of working with these divers to provide opportunities. And I think that they're going to go ahead with or without us. And as we heard earlier this week, they are interested in, targeting the health practitioner field and trying to bridge that gap as well. I think there's a huge opportunity here for our field to grow in a big way by legitimizing scuba diving as a therapeutic activity and modality in recreational therapy. Thank you so much for your time. For further inquiries into the Indiana University Adaptive Scuba Association, you can contact myself. My email is here, or Bob Kessler. His email is listed as well. I hope you guys have enjoyed your week with us and learning more about recreational therapy through and scuba diving.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed Rachel's talk on recreational therapy and scuba diving. I think it was very informational if there was anyone in the audience that is not currently a scuba diver, which is very helpful, I think, for people to get to know scuba a little bit more. So at this time, we want to welcome our panelists. We have Rachel, the presenter, is joining us again, Rachel Wilson. Hi, Rachel. We have Ron Rispoli, who is not only a recreational therapist himself, he's also a Dive Heart board member, full disclosure, right, Ron? And then we have Dawn Schaefer, who is a recreational therapist who found us. I think you found us originally, but we've worked with her through her Special Rec Association out of Kishwaukee. Is that in DeKalb, Dawn? It's in the northwest suburbs of Illinois. So, so anyway, we want to get started. Let me start also by sharing very positive feedback about your presentation, Rachel. Apparently you did a wonderful job, and I agree with them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that from you, Tina Marie, especially.
There, go ahead.
You know, I think a lot of folks may not know the difference between recreational therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy and how you approach things versus, you know, adaptive scuba and scuba therapy as opposed to an OT or a PT. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is actually, you know, something that myself and the other OT doctoral students that were at the instructor training in May, we connected, we started talking, and we were trying to figure out, okay, where does an occupational therapist role and where start and begin, and where does a recreational therapist role start and begin, or end and begin? And first and foremost, we just decided we're just really happy that therapists are getting involved and are advocating for this as a modality in treatments for our clients, because as divers ourselves, we see and feel the benefits. But I think in some of the ways, you know, a recreational therapist role is to, you know, enhance quality of life while providing resources and increasing independence and participating in recreation and leisure activities. So our big thing, you know, is to provide access and help eliminate some of the limitations that are put on individuals with disabilities when they show up to a ski center or a dive center and want to go diving, and they're, you know, already feeling, I've had many people tell me that they've been turned down or that they've, you know, been limited. And one of the amazing things about Dive Heart and other adaptive groups is that they are breaking down these limitations and thinking outside the box, and allowing and helping and assisting these dive centers to do the same, right? And an occupational therapist, I think, is also working towards quality of life, but they are more focused on occupation and activities of daily living, I guess I would say. And, you know, we implement a lot of activities such as in other sports, skiing, snowboarding, fishing, kayaking, canoeing. I mean, our goal is to assist individuals in getting involved in their community, in recreation, and finding other people in those recreation sports that they can connect with. So I guess, you know, there's a lot of overlap. We're working towards very similar goals. But I think the focus of the recreational therapist is outside of a clinic, outside of a hospital. We like to say that you're doing therapy without realizing necessarily that you're doing therapy, because you're playing and you're having fun, and you're, you might go to a physical therapist and you have to do all these, stretches and painful kind of activities, or, work through with your therapist, which are obviously beneficial and necessary. But we are like, okay, let's get out in the world and let's see, what kind of activities you love to do or you're interested in. And let's help you get involved in something in your community or near you that you can achieve those goals.
Awesome. Anybody else, Ron?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm having a bit of difficulty with the volume, but Rachel, I agree with everything you're saying. I'll say, as a person with a disability myself, when our participants show up at different events or wherever they go, they're judged automatically by people. Oh, they can't do this, or they're less than. And that's one thing with Dive Hard. We see somebody come in and it's, what can they do? We're not limiting them. So right then and there, what we do is we give them the opportunity to become involved and not put limitations on them. As far as the work I do, I work with kids with disabilities, young adults, and I have seen some come in who they're like wallflowers at times, and then they got involved in diving and their life did a complete 180. They went from, oh, I can't do anything, to I can do whatever I want to do. And diving was a tool, and Dive Hard helped them realize what they could do. So what we do, I like to say, is we show them that they can do more than maybe they think they can, or they can get involved in different activities that they didn't realize that they could. And then that just opens up their eyes and their world to so much more.
I'm glad to hear. I mean, Rachel is on the panel is the newest recreational therapist. And then we have yourself, Ron, and Dawn, who are seasoned, we'll call you, right? Seasoned rec therapists. And Donna, I want to hear you speak next, but have you seen a change in, I don't know, maybe it's a change in approach or a change in the way that you think about rec therapy from when you started and to what you were hearing out of Rachel just now? I know you agreed with her, Ron, but what has changed, if anything, do you think?
I don't know how to answer that. I just go back to when I got involved with Dive Hard and when we started getting our students involved. And for the most part, they weren't doing anything. And then when we introduced diving, it blew them out of the water, because most people, disability or not, don't dive. So you get somebody with a disability in the water doing something that 99% of the world doesn't do, and probably most of their family doesn't do. It gives them a sense of, it just increases their self-esteem. And again, as I said, it changes their outlook on life. It's not what I can't do, but what are my possibilities besides diving? I can do this, I can do that. I had a student, and Jim and Tina, I know you remember Ashley. She was, I mentioned, a wallflower. She wouldn't do anything, and she got involved, and now she's been a volunteer at one of the major hospitals in her city. She's like a head volunteer for the last 5-6 years. And when she started in our program, you couldn't hear a peep out of her. She was so timid and shy. This helped to bring her out of her shell. And I've had other students, and it just, again, their whole lives, they've been told what they can't do, what they should do this, or they shouldn't do this. And what our organization did, it showed them that they're just like everybody else.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know, Dawn, we want to hear from you too, but it just reminded me of how sometimes you're told from birth, really, as soon as you can understand, that you can't do things, and you grow up believing that you can't do things. Unlike a traumatic injury where somebody gets a spinal cord injury and they're an adult, now they have a loss they're dealing with. So it's a very different perspective, but it kind of brings you to the same place. We'll have people in the room that have traumatic injuries, and they feel like they can't do anything anymore. They're not the man they were because they can't use their legs anymore. But yet they're in the same class with one of your students who was told their whole life, maybe, you can't do that. You're in a wheelchair, right? And I like what you say about bringing them out of their shell and stuff. And, we all know the cool factor for diving is off the charts. So, we got the license on zero gravity. Dawn, tell us about your perspective.
Okay. I did find Dive Hearts through actually a coworker of mine did it. So I saw her talk about Dive Heart and how the kids were involved. I'm like, ooh, well, why can't we do that out here in DeKalb with the cows and the corn? Because it's fun out here. So I loved it. I think what really stuck out after I saw her passion, and I will be the first to say I cannot swim, so I will support anybody who wants to do it, and I will cheerlead, but I can't get in the water without a lifeguard. When I was talking about it with our parents of the teens and the older adults about this, one of the young men came to me, and this was when Shark Week happened to be on, so not the best time to talk about scuba diving, but he had been watching it and he said, so I could maybe do that. I'm like, well, there's no sharks involved, but yes, you can do that. And so he got really excited, and of course, told everybody he's going to swim with sharks. I'm like, that's not part of a trip that we will ever do in the world. But seeing him get excited, then talking to his family members and his friends and just say, I can do that. I can be like part of Shark Week. And he was the best marketing I had for that program. I think we had 6 people sign up. I'm like, all right, rock on. So letting them see, when they see it happening in the world, be it Shark Week or Aquaman or wherever they're seeing it, and then for them to realize, hey, I can try that, or I can do that too. I'm like, absolutely. Why can't you? We got to take, like everybody is saying, all the wonderful panelists, we have to take some modifications and look at a few things just to make sure everybody is safe and sound and Miss Dawn doesn't drown. But we can do that. Why not? So I loved bringing it and then getting them out of the water and them just talking for weeks after the one time they were in the water, like, when are we doing that again? I'm like, well, let's work on that. So let's just try to plan some things. So I know I'm working with them to try to get another one planned. So hopefully we can get that now that COVID may or may not be gone. But just being able for them to see something that, again, like Ron said, not everybody does, but you see it on TV everywhere. And they're like, why can't I do that? And as a rec therapist, I'm the first to say, well, you're right. Why can't you? Let's figure this out. So I love being able to do that for our families and for anyone who wants it. Let me figure out how I can bring that to you. That's my job.
Hey,
I
Jen,
love
Tina.
how rec therapists take play and turn it into a productive, really work. And the participant really doesn't even understand that you guys are saying, yeah, this play is actually work, and it's helping them get to where we need them to get to. And, I just love that aspect of it, and how your therapies complement each other, how rec therapy and OT and PT all kind of work together to help improve the quality of life.
Right. What I find really interesting, and it's interesting also that we didn't purposely schedule this for the last day of the symposium, but we've been building on this conversation of equality when it comes to leisure. And you guys are kind of the experts in that, right? This is what your bread and butter is. You've been fighting for equality and leisure. It's not just, Rachel, what did you just say that OT is about? The daily living practices, so that people, and it's important for them to be able to get up, tie their shoes, dress themselves, be able to go out maybe and attend their job or get together with friends, and that's where some of the overlap is. But it's the rec therapists that are really focused on, you have the right as a human being to not just be someone who's sitting around all day. Like, you have the right to go out and have these exciting adventures. And one of our divers just went whitewater rafting, and she's a quadriplegic. Hello. I don't know if I'd go whitewater rafting. Kind of on Dawn, she doesn't want to swim. I don't know if I want to go whitewater rafting again. But that's the type of thing that if you have the confidence and you're working with the right people that are going to keep you safe, why wouldn't you want to go on something like that? Why shouldn't you be able to do that activity? And, we just happen to be promoting diving and adaptive diving, and, creating. One of the things that Dive Heart loves to say is, once you come on one of our trips, actually, once you come into one of our programs early, you become family. And that is also a big portion of this, is having people feel included, wanted, missed when they're not around. And I think that all rolls into what rec therapy is about as well.
Yeah, our trips, if I could jump in really quick, our trips are not about trips. Really, they're about giving someone a reason to get up in the morning and go, you know what, in 6 months, I'm going to be going to Florida, or I'm going to be going to Cozumel, and maybe we're using a scholarship to help them get there. But the main thing is they're getting up in the morning and they're looking in the mirror going, yeah, I better get in shape. I got to look good when I go on that trip to go to Florida, right? So it's really, I like that aspect.
Yeah, and I think to that, we can think about like, what makes me get up in the morning, or what inspires me, or what refreshes me, what fills my cup, what fills me up. And for me, it's scuba diving, right? And I think a lot of other people here would say the same thing. And so, something that Dr. Karen Lovey said earlier in the week was that leisure isn't a privilege, it should be a right. And I loved that when she said that, because I wholeheartedly agree that scuba diving is costly. Scuba diving is, buying equipment, getting training done, and all those kinds of things. But the resources like Dive Heart and other adaptive agencies that are out there might be able to assist in some of that. And something that one of the OT students talked about was, as practitioners, we always think about like reimbursement because in certain states through the government, individuals are able to receive funding for recreational therapy services. So in Indiana, for example, where I am, we have a Medicaid waiver program. And if we're able to, bill hours through the government for these individuals, and yes, this is red tape and this is not fun stuff to talk about, right? But this is in really solidifying that relationship between an adaptive and therapeutic sport and activity like scuba diving and working with a therapist. These are real conversations that we have to have. And in realizing and recognizing scuba diving as a therapeutic modality for recreational therapists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists, we can provide more resources to these divers. And that's what it's about. It's about getting our people who need to get in the water and providing those experiences for them. So I just think that that's, something that she said earlier this week that I resonated with and want to just kind of emphasize, because I loved what she said about leisure as a right.
I agree. We can all send her a virtual hug for that one, because that was a great comment that she made, I think. So Ron, you've been one of the people that have helped us figure out, when we talk about scuba therapy, what is scuba therapy, right? Ron's been our challenger and our champion throughout about this. And I really would like your perspective on where you see this going. And I feel like this year we really had a breakthrough in a lot of the therapies, especially, announcement. We got approved for the physical therapy continuing education class that we've proposed for Illinois. So that was a very happy moment this morning when I got that.
So now PTs can get continuing education credits, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to my question to you, Ron, if you want to respond.
Well, going to what Rachel said about reimbursement, I wish Illinois did that. And hopefully we will get to that point too, because we all know of the therapeutic benefits. It would be nice if Medicaid and the medical community would back us with that, because what we do is just as important as physical therapy and occupational therapy. It's just, again, as Rachel said, there's a lot of red tape there to get through. But if we were able to do this, I really feel we would be able to get more people in the water as well. I mean, I've got stories. I mean, I've got stories, you know, some of the stories, and from the trips, what it does not only for participants, but for the families. It's therapeutic for the families as well. But if there's a big push, if we could get Illinois to be able to reimburse Medicaid, I think that would open up the doors tremendously to get more people in the water.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's the goal, right? The long range goal.
Being part of a special rec association, Dawn, where do you see this going?
I certainly agree with Ron and would love Illinois to kind of get on board with helping pay. I think within the special rec community, it's the exposure to the program. So offering that one-time, two-time event where they could come and try it, and everybody can come and try it within reason, of course. But letting them see that this is something that you can start in the neighborhood pool. And if you love it, then let us figure out how and where and all that kind of fun stuff to get you into dive hard programs or into the water eventually. So I think within the community, that's where we could fall heavily, is just the exposure of it, promoting it, especially those of us that have done it or have seen it. I know there's a few other SRAs that have been a part of it. We, of course, are tied with, we don't own a pool anywhere in Illinois. So we have to beg, plead, and, well, maybe steal some pool time, but we'll do it. You know, for speaking for all the special recs in Illinois, if there's a want, if there's a need, if there's a desire, we will find that pool and we will put you in that pool. Give us a few days to figure it out, but we will figure that out. So I think that would be an amazing event. I know a lot of SRAs work together, so maybe it's pulling, hey, these three in this area, you're going to host an event, so that there's more people exposed to that and more families see that, because then the families always talk. They all know each other, especially with Facebook. They all have a Facebook group. They're like, oh my gosh, we did this great thing. And then all of a sudden, all the families are talking, and then they go back to their SRA and be like, well, hey, can we try that? And be like, oh, sure. Give me a minute. Let me call some people. Let's figure this out. So I think that's great. I know that all the SRAs, we all do trips also. I know I've, again, never been on a dive hard trip. They look amazing. I would love to be on the boat receiving people, but that's about as far as I'll go. But that's one of the things that we do is figure out trips. How do we get there? What do we need to do? And things like that. So leading down that group, the group that wants it to that area, exposing people just to even try it once and say, yeah, this was awesome. Oh my gosh, I never thought. Or, you know, this maybe isn't for me, but what fun I had. It's all about trying it and figuring out, do you like it? Do you not like it? But either way, let's get them in the water, because it was amazing to watch it. I have some video from underwater. I don't know how I got an underwater video because I wasn't in the pool, but I have underwater video, and all the kids are just sitting here like this. I'm like, you know, they're having the best time of their life in their neighborhood pool that they learned to swim in. It's amazing. So I think that's how we in the community can definitely build this program and get more people in Florida or wherever else fabulous they can go swim.
You know, I couldn't agree more with you, Dawn. You know, after decades in the media business, I'm all about awareness, and you could have the best product in the world, and if people aren't aware of it, it doesn't mean anything. And we're very blessed that we have hundreds of news stories. And if you went to our YouTube channel and clicked on playlists, you would see medical stories, and you'd see symposiums, and you'd see military stories, and you'd see fun stories. and taking those tools and sharing them virtually with families and other therapists, and having them go, wow, I had no idea that this was even available. Because I think, Ron, you said way less than 1% of the population scuba dives, and it's true. And scuba diving really isn't even what this is about. It's a tool to help, like you said earlier, Rachel, build confidence, independence, self-esteem in people of all abilities. And the thing that I like about it is I could have somebody with no arms and no legs that I'm diving with, and they're in a news story or a video, and somebody on the other side of the country sees that news story and goes, wait a minute, that person has no arms and no legs. If they can do this, I can do this. And it's kind of a throwdown, right? It's kind of a challenge. And then when you get your people in the pool, like you were saying, Dawn, we take videos and photos, and then they bring that home. They put that on their social media, share that with their family and friends. And now all of a sudden it's like, there's a new identity. You know, it's not Johnny in a wheelchair anymore. It's Johnny, the scuba diver, which has a cool factor, right?
Off the charts.
Off the charts.
And like you said, we did have one trip, at least one trip where we went with NISRA. And then we used to do yearly trips with Ron's organization. And he would identify early on, you know, the big thing is to work in the community pool and get the people ready to dive and get them all trained up. Because when you're in the big bad ocean, even with sharks, although they're not so bad, but you want everybody trained up, and it's really it's a fun culmination. It's something, like Jim was saying, it's something to look forward to. So it inspires people to keep at it. Or I think, Ron, you might have also had some challenges that you would give people. If you want to be on this trip, you need to be able to do blah, blah, blah. And that helps too. It helps people get incentivized for going on a trip. But we have a question from the audience, and I think this is for all of us. So I'm going to throw it out there, and then I'll let whoever wants to answer first. So it's, what makes scuba a unique experience in terms of recreational activities?
Anybody want to take
Yeah. So first and foremost, the obvious answer is training, right? Because anybody can go to a ski resort and rent some skis and rent a snowboard and, go down the mountain. Of course, adaptive techniques should be taken in place if an individual has a disability that requires that. But with scuba, you can't walk into a shop and rent a tank without a card or without a, some kind of proof that you're certified. I think the unique experience too is we're entering this world that we were not made for. We don't have gills, so we can't breathe underwater, right? And we have this great technology that's allowed us to figure out how to utilize this, scuba self-contained underwater breathing apparatus to get to this new world that we haven't even explored the deepest parts of the ocean yet. I said in my presentation, scuba diving is not an extreme sport or, whatever, but it requires skill, and it requires, patience, and it requires a certification or at least training. So it is still a skill and an activity that requires learning and thought and development, right?
We earn our time underwater.
I love that. Yeah, we do.
What you said is right on the money, because, and I'm sure there'll be studies about this in the future, but when we put our face as an instructor, when you see somebody put their face in the water for the first time and they have a regulator in their mouth and they breathe in, their brain is going, what are you doing, stupid? You're not supposed to breathe underwater. And I've had people that are very good snorkelers and water babies just go, oh, I can't do this, and get ready to get out of the pool. And I laugh and I go, it's okay. It's not natural to breathe underwater.
It isn't.
That whole head thing that happens. We had people from the Illinois School of Psychology that said they interviewed vets all over the country we worked with and said, that first pool session is really powerful. I think that part of it, just wrapping your head around breathing underwater, is one. And the other thing is the freedom. Jumping off of a building and hovering in the middle of an intersection is something you can do if you're underwater, right?
Exactly.
So it's that freedom, and I think it's the mindset.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
And kind of like what I said in my opening is like, those of you who are scuba divers, think back to those first moments underwater. And for some of us, that was scary and that was like unnatural. And then for some of us, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm meant to be here. And one of my favorite things to do as an instructor at IU with my students is, we get in the water and they sit down underwater in the shallow end with the regulators in their mouth and they start breathing. And my boss always encouraged us that, he says, okay, walk away, like get out of the water and walk away, pretend like you got to go fix something in a dive locker and just listen. And we'll listen and we'll hear these college students go, oh my God, that was awesome. Like, that was incredible, and I can't believe we're going to learn how to scuba dive. And like I said, I say it's not an extreme sport, but is a sport to be extremely proud of that you know how to do. And is there a little bit of like, when someone says, oh, you're a scuba diver? Even myself as an able-bodied person, I'm like, yeah, I am. And I feel a lot of pride behind that. And I think that just attributes to, some of these benefits of, psychosocial and psychological benefits that we haven't totally explored in depth yet that exist, right? That there's this confidence that's built. There's this, I do this really awesome activity underwater that a lot of other people don't do. And that's really cool.
Dawn, Ron, what do you guys think?
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Okay. And again, I'm shaking my head because I'm agreeing with everything everybody's saying. From where I'm coming from, I mentioned I work at a rehab school. The majority, all of my students have physical disabilities. So gravity is not their friend. So one of the main differences, the big difference, is when they're in the water, gravity is not an issue. And again, I'm going to go back to another student, Robert, and Jim, because you had him at the bottom of the ocean standing erect. And it had been 15 years since he had been standing upright on his own. And with the current, he was walking on the ocean floor. You don't think that changed him? And I'm going to add to this too, because I'm a big believer of the family and the caregivers. For the majority of them, all they have seen has been the negativity towards their child or what have you. And then when they see the change in their child, it's incredible. The trips we've gone on, at the end, we'd have a banquet and everybody would talk about what the trip meant to them. The tears would be flowing, not only from the participants, but from us as volunteers and also the family members. It was just, it's amazing because this is the first time maybe ever, or first time in a long time, they saw their child doing something that they never would have expected. And it meant the world to their kids and it meant the world to them. So diving has also changed the family as well.
Yeah, Ron, what you said about tears of joy is so right on. When Robert and I did that video, I filmed him swimming backwards as he's running along the bottom of the ocean until the battery died in the camera. Then we watched it at the poolside deck back at the resort, and people who had seen Robert driving around in his wheelchair all day now are looking over his shoulder, seeing him run across the bottom of the ocean, and they sat there and they cried. And I've seen parents cry when their children or their loved ones get out of the pool with the hugest smile on their face and stuff. So it's, tears of joy is a big part of what we do. And like you said, the last night when we go around, I said, what'd you think? How'd the week go? There's not a dry eye in the house. It's really cool.
It's true. It's true. I was lucky enough where when I started, I was not a scuba diver when I started volunteering for Dive Heart. And so I was at the pool deck a lot assisting. And those were the first stories I encountered, was talking with the families, with the people that had someone they loved in the water, and hearing their side of what they were seeing and experiencing and saying, I never thought I would see them do this again, or I'm so excited to see the smile that they have on their face. I remember talking to a family who said, our son is challenged he's on the autism spectrum. And he tells us when he feels like he needs to get back in the water that he's getting that need again to get back in, to kind of clear his head and to be able to deal with the rest of humanity for another portion of time. But yeah, those were my first experiences where and Don, you probably could relate to that since you don't get in the water either, right?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I know some of my older kiddos that were part of this, what I heard when they came out is that they were so afraid when they started because they see all these people in the suits, and then they see these big containers. They're like, I have to carry that? I'm like, oh, don't worry, you're in the water. So there's this fear of I can't, which unfortunately our kiddos and our adults, that fear is sadly universal. So for them to accomplish and overcome a fear and then get out of the water and be like, I did that. It's just like, again, the dry eye. I may be on the pool deck taking pictures. The parents are all sitting there taking pictures. We're all just crying, and we didn't even have a amazing banquet. We're just like, the kids get out and just say, I did that. It's like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. So seeing that's just amazing to me. Still gives me chills just talking about it. And again, I'm standing on the deck with the camera.
Yeah, fear is a big factor, I think, in what we do. I think that, I think one of you said earlier that we really have the market on zero gravity, which is so true. And there's a lot of great therapies out there. There's, HIPAA therapy and all sorts of stuff, but we do own zero gravity, and we do. And we fully intend on taking advantage of that fact. And how can you help us, help people overcome that fear and champion this cause as we go forward? Anybody?
I'll go, since fear was my thing and I'm still fearful. I think, again, it's just the exposure. And one of the parts that I want to work on, I think in my next one, bringing back all the ones that want to be in the water, but still inviting people with that fear, be like, can I just watch? Oh, absolutely. Come on and watch and do this. We'll do it again. So giving that time to see those kids that are just like them, or their peers, or their whomever it is, accomplish that fear. And then they can sit back and be like, well, if they can do it, so can I. So just seeing that, because a lot of the kids and a lot of the adults, they learn from each other because they're a group. They're all together. They go through school, then they go through this. So they're all together. So if one of them can accomplish it, they're like, well, why can't I do that? It's like, well, why can't you? Let's go. So seeing that and bringing in people just to watch, be it on a video, be it on the pool deck or whatever, getting that exposure to see the joy that happens when they get out of the pool and the accomplishment, I think that'll bring people to be like, okay, I'm next. It's like, well, okay, next time. But I think that's amazing. That would be a part I'd play.
Awesome.
I think another factor is the challenge by choice. We try it. If you like it, we'll do some more. If you don't, then we'll take a step back. It's not like you have to do this. If you're interested, let's take baby steps. And if you feel comfortable doing this, well, let's go to the next step. And in my experiences, I've had very few people go backward. When they did it, they would go forward to the point that they would get underwater. And, it could take them 2, 3, 4 times to just stick their head completely underwater where they're breathing on the rag underwater. But they did it. And then they could progress to going into deeper water and, eventually going into, a 12-foot pool. So when we say challenge by choice, we're not making you. If you want to do it, that's great. We'll help you along. You'll never be by yourself. We'll help you along. But if at any time you don't feel comfortable, we're going to allow you to step back because we want it to be enjoyable for you.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Letting people say, hey, it's not a race. Don't feel like you got to do this all at one time and stuff. What do you think, Rachel?
I agree with everything that Ron's saying. I kind of talked about earlier that we do our intention, or often what we find in recreational therapy is that we don't realize we're doing therapy because it's fun and it's and we are working towards these established goals, like I talked about, the therapeutic process that we, utilize as CTRSs. And but we don't want like weaknesses or those kinds of things to be the center of our treatment plan or anything like that. Our focus is strengths and some areas that maybe we might need to work on. As an instructor at IU and just teaching college students how to dive, I've had multiple students walk in and are like, I want to try this. I think this would be really awesome and really great. But I can tell that they're nervous. And you can tell a diver is nervous from the minute they walk in, right? And there's a lot of indicators that kind of, show. And we go at a pace that's appropriate for them. So I might have a class of 8 students, and I have my one student who I know right off the bat, or maybe the first breath underwater, I can tell they stand up right away. I'm like, that was weird. That felt weird. And I'm like, okay, take off your mask and put your regulator in and just put your face in the water. Don't sit down. Don't go underwater completely. Just put your face in the water. And they'll sit there with a few breaths off the regulator, and then they'll look up at you and they're like, that's awesome. Or there's people that say, I don't know about this still. And you just go at a pace that's most comfortable for that diver, and I think that learning different teaching styles is something that Dive Heart, employs a lot of. Here's some adaptive techniques, or here's how you work with this individual. And in my experience, in implementing this with individuals with disabilities, you need to have a dive instructor that has experience with working with individuals with varying disabilities, because a just standard diving instructor might not know how to address those needs and strengths. And so, I just think that, looking at each diver as the individual that they are is very important. Everyone is different. Everyone goes at a different speed. Everyone learns in different ways. And we have to address those needs, especially when we're engaging in an activity like scuba diving that requires, safety considerations and other aspects of going in depth.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I love most, Ron was talking about challenge by choice, and that, it might not be a big win, but one of the things that when I am talking to someone who's saying, well, what is your program about? Or, what do you guys do? I emphasize that each person is going to go away with a win for the day. That win may not be, I got to the bottom of the pool. The win might be, I got my face in the water, or I put my kid on today. I mean, I know we've worked with people that had such sensitivity to even having something on their shoulders in the water. It wasn't the weight of it. It was just the feel of it, that it took them a couple of times. And I love the volunteers and the instructors that we have, because they do have that special something that allows them to be patient and allows them to show the people that we're serving that this is a win. You didn't fail today, you won today. And if they can go away with that feeling, then it worked. And it wasn't even that they were or were not on scuba. It was that they got this win. So I think that's one of my favorite things about our programs.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how instructors sometimes are afraid to work with individuals with disabilities. Some of the best students I've ever had have been students with disabilities, because you know what? They have to get up in the morning and they have to figure out how to get to the bathroom. And they take on challenges that we take for granted every day. And so they're like heads in the game when they are coming to us. By the time they come to us, they're like ready for diving, and I've had them be much more together than able-bodied, folks, for lack of a better word. But that's when I started doing this. I mean, there were none of the major training agencies didn't want to do this. I mean, they were afraid. And what you said is completely right. I mean, that's why our training program is designed around getting instructors and dive buddies experience with individuals with disabilities. If you've never been around one, you can do empathy training all day and pretend you're blind or pretend you're a para, pretend you're a quad. And I give you an instructor card and you never met anybody with a disability. Do you think that person's really going to go out and teach diving to somebody with a disability? Chances are, the odds are they're not going to do that. And I've seen it trained all over the world, and they're afraid. So that's why our program is so unique, and that we build that experience into the trips and into the training and into the social exchanges and stuff.
Yeah.
So one of the things I appreciate about Dive Heart is that you guys have said repeatedly is that we're not interested in quantity. Obviously, we want to get this, out to whoever we can, but in terms of training instructors and in training buddies, our goal is quality. And that we're not going to shortcut any standards. We're not going to, just let someone slip by, oh, they did okay, but they didn't meet every, need. You guys are very specific in the training and ensuring that those who are going to support divers in the water know what they're doing and are able to react to situations as they come and adapt. And that's the biggest thing in rec therapy is we adapt. We adapt to our individuals' needs, to their equipment, to their the progression of how we might implement an activity or sport. And so that's something that I've come to just really appreciate about Dive Heart is the attention to quality in the buddies and in the instructors.
It worked.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because we may not have the most instructors in the world out there, but we just want to have the best, and the safest, knock on wood, we've been pretty lucky there.
Yeah. And I have to admit something. So this past year, we've been talking about how we've worked with all these occupational therapy, doctoral candidates. And it is not that we haven't had rec therapists that were going through their undergrad or graduate work that haven't come to us. I've honestly been afraid because I'm like, I'm not sure we can give you the experience that you need to get through your program. Well, I am ready. Come on, rec therapists, come work with Dive Heart, because I think that I think it'd be a good fit, and I'm really excited. It was so wonderful working with young people that are going to go out there and practice and kind of help expand this practice. That I'm just really excited. Can't wait for the next school year to start.
I'd like to get all your thoughts on the fact, one of our goals, and I think you all know this, is we want to build a deep warm water therapy pool so that we can replicate the things we see in open water in a confined warm water safe environment with supervision and stuff. Do you think that the therapeutic community, rec therapists, OTs, PTs, would come and use a deep warm water facility where we could really, you could go out and get a grant and come in and study anything you want, Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or amputations, fathom limb pain,
Phantom
limb pain. Thank you for correcting me. What do you think? Would you think that therapists would use that and be interested in doing something like that? I mean, what do you guys think, Ron?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something new for a lot of the different therapies to actually get in the underwater and see what the effects of scuba will be, on the body and on the mind. I don't know anybody else is doing it. I think people would jump at the chance, especially if it's in their own backyard. We'd have people coming from all over the country, I think from all over the world, wanting to get in on that. I think it would be great. I think it would be a phenomenal opportunity for, again, all the therapies to do something that they haven't done before.
Don, what do you think?
I would love to see it come to fruition. I've seen a few pictures because I may stalk you on Facebook just to pay attention. So I've seen that, and I think it would be amazing because, again, when we do it in the community pool, sometimes we're lucky if we get 6 feet, sometimes we're lucky if we get 12 feet. So having the actual feel of what a true full-on dive is, where you have to touch the bottom of something, I think it would be amazing. And not necessarily in my area, because most of my kiddos that are participating have cognitive disabilities, but I'm venturing into different modalities to work with different people. I think that putting individuals that have more physical disabilities and things like that into a weightless situation, so maybe not scuba to start, but weightless, so that they can feel their whole body again and realize that it works. It just works differently. So I think that would be amazing. And being at a warm water pool, of course, that's perfect for everybody, because then nobody's got blue teeth and lips and everything else. So I think it would be an amazing thing. And yes, to Ron's point, if it's in the backyard, I will drive some people from DeKalb to wherever that is to get them in the water. I will rent a bus if I have to. So I think it would be amazing for just everybody.
Rachel, how about you?
And once again, I agree with everything that you guys have said. We have heard testimonials from individuals who have gone scuba diving into deep water environments and report chronic pain relief at depth, and not just at depth, but for weeks after. And there have been little to none studies on this. So what is it about going, as an instructor, I learn all about the different pressure groups as we descend. And the serotonin that's released at that point. I think, Jim, you have reported, divers that experience this, and we need to study this. So for you all to create this environment that allows for a space for research to be conducted is amazing. I think that's one of the biggest limitations for practitioners and individuals with disabilities is, where do I go? Or how, as practitioner, how do I research this, physiological change that I know exists within scuba diving? How do I prove that it exists? I feel it when I go to depth. I know other scuba divers feel it. I know that individuals with disabilities feel it. So how do we prove it? Because unfortunately, we can't just take our word at it, right? We have to, as health practitioners, we have to have evidence-based practice. So we have to have studies that support an intervention, and we have to have, the data there. So for you all to be pioneers in the physiological, and more than that, of course, but that happens at depth, would be amazing. I view you as one of the leaders of adaptive therapeutic scuba. I think that in taking the instructor course and other instructor courses and comparing the differences, that, as Gabe said the other night, it will, without question, make you a better instructor and a more equipped instructor to deal with different adaptations as they come. So researchers will flock to you, and therapists, I believe, will flock to you as well, because I think this is an amazing opportunity as a deep well pool to study those different benefits.
I like it.
I'd like it too, yeah. Does somebody have a question?
Oh, this one, Rachel, is specific. I'm not even sure if occupational therapy has a doctoral program, but someone's asking it from the audience, when are you going to go for your PhD to continue research on the value of adaptive scuba?
So as you can become a recreational therapist through a bachelor's degree, you do not have to get your master's. the PhD, and even getting my master's in recreational therapy, I mean, people were like, why are you doing that? You don't need to do that. I wanted to learn more and I wanted to explore more. I think if I went to get my PhD, it would not be specifically in recreation therapy. It would be in some kind of physiological focus, so that I could be more research based and that I could really explore the research evolving around recreational therapy. Recreational therapy is a very new field, but we like to say, but it's old, but it's new in terms of occupational and physical therapy. Those two have been around a while bit longer than rec therapy, is why when I tell someone I'm a recreational therapist, they look at me like this. What? What is that? And so we're still, in different populations in different states, we're more recognized than we are in other states. But if you're a recreational therapist, you know that it has such good benefits for quality of life for individuals. I have thought about going for my PhD, and will continue to consider it. But it won't be in recreational therapy. It would be in a field that I feel that I could focus more on the mechanisms that occur during depth. And I already did my bachelor's and master's in rec therapy. So time to focus on something else. Challenge by choice, of course.
You guys have done an excellent job in articulating, I think, to our viewers, the differences between RT, OT, and PT. What have we, and we have preset questions, but what have we missed? What have we not said that you would want to articulate from your perspective that we haven't heard yet? Ron, do you want to take it? Or anyone?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, we have some set questions that we talked about based on our experience and knowing what we know about rec therapy, but what have we missed? What haven't we talked about that our audience could benefit from? Autism. I know that we haven't gone into that at all, and I know you work with folks with autism. I mean, underwater we lose, triggers that normally set people with autism, off. The pressure, the ambient pressure helps soothe them. It's kind of like a sensory deprivation room, and the cool factor, like we talked about, is off the charts. But what are some things we haven't hit on that you could like to have people know about when it comes to rec therapy and how it applies to adaptive scuba?
Well, okay, thanks for elaborating. I could hear a little better now. What's interesting is I generally work when we go in the pools in Oak Lawn, and the majority of our participants have cognitive or intellectual disabilities. And one of the things that I see is the focus. Somebody who has autism or ADHD or some type of intellectual disability, many times it's easy to get off track. They're doing something and then they get distracted with something else. One of the great things about diving is there's a lot of focus underwater. And for example, we have the puzzles that I believe, Rachel, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, where you scramble them underwater and the participants are putting puzzles together underwater, and they may have issues, concerns with whatever, but when they're trying to put a puzzle together, they're breathing underwater, they're focusing on the task at hand, whereas on land, they may not be as focused. So again, one of the things that really intrigues me is seeing a person who does have difficulty with focus, and when we get them underwater, they are just like Johnny on the spot. So I see that is a huge plus. Again, the majority of my students have physical disabilities, so their issues, if you will, are different than people with the cognitive impairments. But when I see somebody that has difficulty with doing one task all the way through, and then we get them underwater and you can't get them off that task, there's something there.
You know, I'm glad you brought up breathing, because I think what we do, there's a multiple of therapies that are happening that we don't even realize. And breathing is a big part of what we do. Controlled breathing, you know, I mean, just manipulating your breath to control your buoyancy and be completely weightless is the coolest thing in the world to me. But breathing therapy is yeah, you're right, a big part of being underwater and going through, you know, what we do. Rachel, Dawn, what do you guys think?
I was actually going to
Breathing.
talk about the breathing because I know in working with my kiddos when they did that on the spectrum, often there's some behavioral challenges that go with it in their younger years. And when they were in the scuba, they had to control their breathing. They learned breathing techniques, which in my time in behavioral health hospitals, that's a coping skill that we're teaching kids how to control their breathing so that they can be more aware of themselves and be more present. So seeing the kiddos, I mean, you're forced to do it because if not, there's other problems, but for them to understand how important breathing is, and then once they get out of the pool and they're at program the next day or at camp, and they're getting frustrated or they're getting upset, I can say, you remember your scuba breathing? And then they just immediately, they just know what they're supposed to be doing. And they start that breathing and they calm down because it, like Ron said, it helps them focus, but the breathing helps them be aware. So they're spatially aware, they're bodily aware, and they calm down. And then of course we talk about scuba and how exciting it was, which is fabulous because they're no longer upset about whatever happened. So breathing was a huge thing I saw, especially for my kiddos on the spectrum, because that's when they get so upset, they don't think to control that. And that helps them come, like they don't see the whole connection, whereas that's what we're there for. So that was amazing for me to see. And then for them to use it outside of the pool, for them to realize it helps them not just swim and be scuba, they get to do that outside the pool. So it was an amazing part.
You know, we've actually worked with respiratory therapists who've said, I can tell every time Johnny has been diving, because in language too, right? Speech therapists have said this
Speech
too.
therapists have said it.
Yeah.
People who have Down syndrome, I didn't know this, a lot of times have compromised respiratory
Yeah.
systems. And so families have shared that, you know, the doctor knows when they've been on scuba because it helps.
Yeah. Rachel, how about you?
Yeah, I think to, Ron's point about like the puzzles underwater and as recreational therapists, we might want to implement scuba diving as, a modality to bring about therapeutic change. Does that mean that you have to go and get your scuba certification and check all these boxes and be this perfect diver? No. Through organizations such as Dive Heart, is there an opportunity to make adaptations and to create an experience and a dive team that supports you and allows you to get a certification? Absolutely, yes. But we might not, an individual might not have those resources, might not have an adaptive instructor that's with Dive Heart or other organizations to complete this. Are there benefits in the pool at 9 feet, 10 feet of depth? I mean, even getting underwater and just breathing off that regulator, to me, is a huge success. And beyond puzzles, I mean, we utilize progressive muscle relaxation as recreational therapists. With the use of full face communication masks, we can do progressive muscle relaxation at depth in a 10-foot pool. And do we know the benefits of that yet? No. But could we? Yes. And there are other evidence-based, land-based activities that exist that we can adapt to the underwater environment, that paired with this weightlessness, this freedom from disability, this underwater breathing that's unnatural experience for us to bring about therapeutic change. I mean, to support these individuals and their goals and their objectives. And I just think that, like I said in my presentation, that it's endless the imagination. I mean, the motto of Dive Hard is imagine the possibilities. Imagine the possibilities of taking recreational activities that we know have beneficial outputs on the surface and adapting them to the underwater environment. Let's do that. Let's explore this, already supported aquatic therapy intervention and make it a scuba aquatic therapeutic intervention. I mean, my master's project was focused on this. My master's project for my, thesis in 2020 was, I know that, you can get benefits from recovering your regulator at depth, but we can also make this an activity in a game or fun underwater without having to enter that open water environment that others might find intimidating or scary, right? Going in the ocean or going in a quarry or going wherever that open water environment might be, and adapting it to a confined water pool-like experience and evaluating those therapeutic changes through these already established activities that not only recreational therapists utilize, but occupational therapists utilize, physical therapists utilize. What could we do? We could do a lot.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm glad you brought up communication, because when I first started taking adaptive diving, I thought, what a waste of time this is going to be for blind people, because you go underwater to see all the beautiful things. And then when I went through it and I'm feeling the walls of the quarry, I'm going, wow, this is kind of cool. How could we make this better? And using full face masks with communications is exactly how we said, wow, now we can take somebody who's blind or visually impaired and put their hand on something and push a button and talk to them and go, hey, that is the prop of a boat, or you could tell a story, right? You can narrate to them while they're underwater and they can communicate back to you. And there's a lot of comfort, right, in being able to successfully communicate with people underwater, because it's not easy, right? I mean, if you know sign language, you got it made, but otherwise, and the sound of someone's voice that you trust also underwater is huge. I mean, it calms people down right away, but communication's big part in my book of adaptive diving.
I agree, but I also find it interesting that the majority of our divers with visual impairments do not want communications. They have no desire to hear us in their head. They want to go explore the ocean, and they find thrill and joy and comfort and they find all sorts of benefits from diving, even though they might be visually impaired. They enjoy, they can feel the depth change when, I that's been explained to me and things like that. So I'm like, that's got to be really, really pretty cool. I mean, I've dived with my mask blacked out, but I'm sure it's not the same because my body isn't as trained to be sensitive as theirs are. But I wanted to do one shout out, because we keep talking about all these positive benefits, and there's been one of our adaptive divers that's attended every night, Lewis, and he has been, to me, he's an inspiration about what scuba diving can do for an individual. He came to us, and I remember his mom, after his first trip, was so excited about him being so accepted by the Dive Heart community. We challenged him to get more dive experience, and darn it if he didn't go out and find the aquarium where he could do some volunteer work, and started volunteering there. And now he has over 100 dives, and he has a dive that's over an hour long. So I know, Louis, you're not speaking tonight, but I just wanted to tell you that when we talk about all these different modalities, and he's become one of our biggest champions as well, let me say that. But I wanted to thank you and just say you're part of the reason that we do everything that we do. And so we're very excited to have you be part of Dive Art.
Yeah, and we're very proud of the fact that we try to do everything with love, and we want people to feel valued and have purpose. And you helping us move this forward with therapists I think we're all kind of on the same page, doing different things a little bit, but we can't thank you enough for being here and being part of Dive Heart and the family, and hope to see you underwater.
Right. I mean, Dawn, you and I have a date to speak later so that we can get our next pool session set. And, again, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. All of our presenters, all of our panelists. I thought each evening was such a nice way of talking about what we're trying to do. And I'm super, super excited about, how we had 2 nights of specific therapy conversations with people. And we will be doing a little bit of editing, especially from day one. But we'll be doing a little bit of editing, and we'll be posting all 3 nights up on our website. So people can go back and view it, and you could share it for people that maybe haven't been able to see any of the symposium nights. So we'll be sharing it. You can share it. What else am I forgetting to say?
We've had people therapists from all over the country responding to us, and it's very exciting to see that they want to get involved with Dive Heart too. And we believe a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we have hundreds of stories, and stories stick. So I would say that anyone watching, you guys on the panel, if we could share those stories and inspire people, because there's a lot of people during this pandemic that are struggling mentally and emotionally, and if we can show them stories of hope and healing that inspire them, we can turn lives around.
So
last thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. How can we grow adaptive therapeutic scuba? Advocation, sharing the word and getting it out there. I think that's the biggest thing, is that like I said earlier, people think that scuba diving is a very intimidating and extreme sport that they can't participate in unless they're in like peak physical shape. And that's not the case. I mean, I have people all the time who walk into my, classroom and are like, I'm not sure about this. I don't think I can do this. And there's this intimidation factor. There's the fear factor that we were talking about earlier. And really, it's built up in our heads. It's this box that we put ourselves in, just like I did before I tried scuba diving. I put myself in a box, and I was like, oh, I'll never be a scuba diver. Like, I'll never travel to that unforeseen world. Yes, I will. And yes, you will. And yes, will so many other people. I mean, it's yes, it takes work, and it's not easy all the time. And it's not just like walking into a shop and renting gear and jumping out on the mountain. It requires training. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that we are capable. You are capable. Organizations like Dive Heart exist to ensure that you have a fun and safe experience, and that if your goal is to become certified, you will. And if your goal is to just enjoy the water, you will. And I guess that's all I just wanted to say as a wrap up, is that advocate for scuba diving as a therapeutic intervention, advocate for recreational therapy as a profession, and let's bridge the gap between these two, because they fit like this to me. I mean, they fit perfectly to me. So that's all I have to say.
We're down to the last few minutes. Ron, Dawn, anything you'd like to add?
Go ahead, Dawn.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm just so proud of being able to work with Dive Heart, with Jim, with Tina Marie, and all the team that came out to help us out here, to bring this experience to my families that, again, being in DeKalb, Illinois, and the cows and the corn, and I love it, they never, ever would have thought, hey, why can't we go scuba diving? Well, yeah, you can. I'll figure it out. I think my families are realizing that if you tell me that you want to do something, I'm going to figure out a way to make it happen. So I love bringing Dive Heart in as much as I possibly can. I know it's not a lot because we're too far out, but I get it. So build the pool. We'll come. We will come. I will even bring snacks if I have to. Because, you know, in rec therapy, if you don't bring snacks, they don't come either. So I look forward to so many more dives to watch everybody succeed. And maybe one day I'll be brave enough to get in the pool too.
We'll get you eventually.
Ron, is it? We good?
I'll try to be brief, hopefully. I was actually a scuba diver before I met Jim, and this was several years ago. But one of the things that stopped me from diving was the accessibility. Being in the Midwest, yeah, you have Lake Michigan, but you don't really have too much else. And none of my buddies dove. Okay, so yeah, I had the certification, but it's not something you do by yourself. So you got to find other people to do it. And I really hadn't. And then I met Jim and when Dive Heart was beginning, and that's a story in itself. But through the years, I would get my students into the program, and I'd get several every year. But the resounding words that came from everybody was, you know, how can I do this? Where can I do this? It's, you know, it's not like playing baseball or basketball where, you know, you can just sit in a wheelchair and do whatever. This is something that most people have never even dreamed about doing. And then all of a sudden you're saying, hey, how'd you like to be a scuba diver? They're like, what? You know, so it's part of that of, it's all new to them. So along with what you guys are saying, it's getting people to feel comfortable with scuba as a sport, and then we as therapists use it as a modality for change. But again, it's something that not a lot of people are completely familiar with, and it's the fear of the unknown. So if we can help them realize that it is something that not only is it cool, but it's something that they can do, I think that'll help with our profession as well.
That's great.
Well, this is our 20th anniversary and our 11th Adaptive Scuba Symposium. And we're really excited about the next 20 years and doing a lot more of these. So we want to thank you guys a lot for being part of this.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm going to see if our producer here can take us out on the song. That sound good? All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be in touch. Stay tuned to our Facebook channel, and we'd love to have you if you haven't already been on one of our trips or at one of our programs or anything like that. And thank you again to our panelists. It was a great 3 days.
Imagine the possibilities.
Be a problem, but we got solutions. And if you want to win, add your contribution. So we are the people like the Constitution. So now is the time for your resolution. You want to be free? Free, free. Then sing with me. Yeah. You want to be free? Then take that leap. Take a dive, take a dive, take a dive. I see you striving diver. I see you climbing diver. I see you diving. Take a dive, take a dive, take a dive. I see you striving diver. I see you climbing diver. I see you diving.
Life is an ocean, streaming alone, ripples of motion, hitting us all. Yeah, yeah.
Dive in, dive in. Your time to win. Our hearts all in. Let's let the fun begin. Take a dive, take a dive, take a dive. I see you striving diver. I see you climbing diver. I see you diving. Take a dive, take a dive, take a dive. I see you striving diver. I see you climbing diver. I see you diving. hard.